All right. So, this is a very sensitive topic. Because children and animals are triggers, emotional triggers, suffering triggers that everyone out there who happens to be a parent will be influenced by or will be triggered by and defend and all that. And so at this point, I don't even care how I trigger people. People will be triggered no matter what. So you might as well just say what you got to say, because they either like you or hate you. It doesn't matter. It doesn't even matter at this point. And so I'll just say whatever, right? And this is my Facebook. If you don't like it, then delete me, block me, don't follow me, because I will trigger you. But yeah, I remember just talking about how children are raised even like 6 years ago, and all these mothers and crunchy mamas and whatever came out of the woodwork, be like, you don't have a freaking kid, you shouldn't talk about raising children, how do you know, da da da. And it's just like, back then I had a retort, I had a response to it, but definitely not the type of response I have today. You don't have to have a child to understand what happens when you raise a child a certain way. And so that's why we have so many different types of people out there, because of how they raise their children. And we have cavemen predatory instincts that could be tempered and not be triggered so often, so much. But then what triggers the predatory instincts is the suffering in children, the suffering in animals, the suffering in people. And suffering isn't bad per se. It's just how you respond to it and how you teach someone how to respond to suffering. And when you suffer a whole lot on a continuous basis, that triggers the predatory instincts in the population, which is why we have so much crime, so many addictions, so much sexual predation, and why we have so many children out there, okay? Because somebody needs somebody to soothe them, and it turns into eventually having a child. And so yesterday I did a lot of purging of the old memories, because I carried around 30 years of photographs. I mean, I don't know what prompted me. I know my dad took pictures of us as children, just for family photos and all of that. But I mean, we didn't have the internet back in the early 1990s. And if we did, we weren't putting our photos on there. We didn't have social media. Yeah, we had AOL, and the chat rooms. But as far as uploading photos, that wasn't until way later on. So my social media, my selfie Generation X type of thing, was getting those disposable cameras, and then also buying, regular cameras, and like the Nikons, and learning, photography, but not really learning it. For me, it's just observing different cultures. Like I would go to San Francisco and I would take pictures of the homeless. I would go to like East LA, South Central LA way back in the early 90s after the riots. And I was like so interested, because the riots were all over TV. And I wanted to see what East LA was like. So when I was living in LA for a minute as a nanny, I made a point to ask the housekeeper in the house if I can go and visit her family and take pictures of South Central, take pictures of that part. And it was cool. I mean, and then of course, yeah, walking around San Francisco and all different parts, taking pictures of the fights and the homeless and the drug addicts. And it was just such a whole world out there. And then taking pictures of just everything that I was doing, taking pictures. And I'll tell you, I spent a whole lot of money on photographs. When I went to China, taking pictures. Taking pictures was just the thing for me. And so now with me sharing my life is a natural progression from what I was doing back in the 90s, of taking pictures, recording everything that I was doing, because it's memories, it's things that you want to remember. And some of them are bad memories that you need to let go. And some are really great memories that it just reminds you of this time and that time. And then you see yourself evolve and change over however many years. And so pictures were something that was just something so special to me. And so taking pictures now with the camera and social media is just like the bomb. It's great. And so anyways, so then, so yesterday I was purging out all those little demons. And then of course the thing with the Paris Hilton and what she went through, and then shades of that. And I know I come from a scientist household, being raised by scientists, so the whole conspiracy world, the MK Ultra, all the different human experimentation, whether it's biotech or behavioral scientists doing the if-then or doing behavioral modification, all of that has been used back in, of course, way back in the 1900s, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and then it became perfected, and then now you see the outcome of it in Hollywood. But then the whole conspiracy community, the Illuminati stuff, right? People's attraction and fascination with celebrities and influencers don't even think of them as humans. As you've seen in the conspiracy world, some people look at Hollywood and politicians as reptilians, not even human. So that's how they separate themselves. And so they don't make that connection that those celebrities have also gone through some behavioral modification that were used in Silicon Valley, that were developed and engineered in Silicon Valley, and then was institutionalized. And then, of course, plausible deniability. And there are certain people that do perpetrate that type of training on specific people based upon the intentions. And of course, about kids being brought to boarding house or boarding schools or behavior modification camps. I've been in some of them in my childhood because of acting out, of which some of them don't even exist anymore, which I wrote in my book, that I was in like a girl center or a juvenile hall. And so there is behavior modification, things like that go on in there that expound upon what you already have strengths in, which, and then how you channel and develop a person's behaviors, proclivities, and even academics and other stuff. It's just all on how you want to develop society. And so that coupled with all the pictures I was going through yesterday and releasing a lot of the old, the memories, just stuff that just isn't relevant anymore. I mean, carrying around that much baggage just in the back of your car is like carrying around so much baggage in your body that when you release those demons, it feels great. It's a purging process. It's renewal. It's time to recalibrate. It's time to now develop another world that, remembers the stuff, remembers good memories and bad memories, but the bad memories don't run you. They don't traumatize you. You don't loop in them. And so then, then I was mentioning suffering and predatory behavior and how people are attracted to suffering and how suffering can be innovative. It can also be extremely, destructive. It depends upon how you respond to it. And so just making those observations, and then about babies and about the release process. The whole point of the J world is to release the demons, so that way you have a whole new lease on life, that you can still take part in the old world on some level, but without going to such an extent to be so excessive that you destroy yourself in the old world and you don't give your body a chance and your mind a chance to develop and evolve into the new world and prolong your life and potentially, beat death, okay? Now, of course, there's always weird instances and freak accidents and shit that goes on that you can't control. But for the most part, people don't die from freak accidents. They die from their own excessive lifestyle and belief systems, okay? The medical system is one of many instances where people have gone to the excess when it comes to cures and therapies. And so death is mostly self-induced by the individual and what they put themselves through purposely, intentionally. And so when I read that article about babies and crying it out, I'm going to read that based upon that person's perspective, because I didn't acknowledge what their conclusion was to allowing a baby to cry it out. I sort of ignored it for a good reason, because I wanted to put my own spin on it, but I'm going to read it from their perspective and then, of course, put my spin on it, because we all need to put our spin on it based upon our intentions. Okay? And so let me read this real quick. Hey, Audrey, nice to see you. And so crying it out, this is from this person's perspective. A foundation for NPD and BPD. Now, the reason why they say it's a foundation, because people aren't releasing their demons. They are trapping those genetic idiosyncrasies and things inside. So when you are implementing a different behavioral modification and you already have predisposed issues, then yes, NPD and BPD is. And what is that NPD? Let's see what that is. It's some kind of narcissism and borderline personality disorders. Okay. So cry it out, a foundation for NPD and BPD. One of the ways children have to adjust to a new order is called letting them cry themselves out. Okay, the mothers put the child into the crib at night to sleep. It is bedtime. The sense of aloneness and the loss of contact with the mother's body terrifies the child, who begins to scream and cry. No animal mother would fail to respond to a baby's cry. Some human mothers believe, however, that to respond would be wrong. To give in to a child's crying will spoil their child. Besides, they have been told crying is good for a child. Okay, let's read it from that perspective, then I'll put my spin on it. The first time this happens, the child must cry for hours before falling asleep. The mother might think the child has learned a lesson, but the child doesn't have the energy for a repeat performance. After several experiences of this kind, the child learns to give up the struggle for contact with the mother. In effect, the child has cut off the longing for his contact, so no longer feels the pain of frustration. A new reality is in which the desire for intimacy and closeness is not expressed has been accepted. The foundations for narcissism and the borderline personalities have been laid. Wow. Now, I've seen how some mothers out there respond to this. And they're just like, oh my God, I can't do this to my kid. Oh my God, this is so horrible, la la la. And I remember how I was raised. I mean, I don't remember exactly as far as a child, but if I cried, we cried. They didn't stop the crying. If we were crying because of something that we did and we were punished for it and it turned out to be crying, we cried. And I don't remember them saying, well, stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about. I never heard that. I don't remember hearing that. But I just know that, when we were in our bedrooms at night and they closed the door, and I was scared in my room. I was scared being in the dark, maybe after watching Magnum PI and some of the, the scary shows out there where they have the music and all that, and the stress and, all that, you get the nightmares and all that. And so, but even though with the door closed and it's dark in the room, I would just put my head over the covers and just deal with it. I mean, I also was alone after school because I got kicked out of preschool. And so I had to deal with being alone too at home with the alarm on and all that. And so there's that fear, right? But that fear needed to happen. And then you realize that there's nothing really to fear. Okay. And so it does give you that capacity to self-soothe and to know that you can save yourself from the fear, that those fears that you have aren't really reality, that you don't need mommy and daddy to save you all the time. You don't, and so there's that groundwork that's laid. Now, if someone has already idiosyncrasies and shit in their personalities, then yeah, potentially narcissism and borderline personalities. But if you have relatively okay background, then that actually can help you become more independent. And so the spin on this, okay, is that when you're crying, that's your body releasing. I mean, if your diaper's been changed, you've been fed, it's bedtime, there's nothing poking you, so there's no scratchy tags or some pin poking you, and you're just crying, kids have so many demons in their body. And also, they're going to feel, because of course you've been in your mother's womb for 9 months and also next to them. And now you're being shown that you have to be independent and you have to go into a crib. Now it's time to learn independence. Always having somebody soothe you then trains you to always look out there for somebody to save you from emotions, from feeling alone, from feeling the pain of a loss. And it could be a loss of a job, it could be a loss of a boyfriend, it could be a loss of a best friend, it could be a loss of so many things. And so then you're trained to always like go to the bars, get drunk, have a group of friends around you, go into those self-destructive behaviors because it was taught to you as a child that you could not take care of yourself, even just being okay with being alone. And so the thing with Paris Hilton, okay, and even myself, being isolated for whatever purpose, whether, for so many different reasons, being isolated does train you on how to be on your own. And people are like, that's abusive. Not necessarily. You know what's abusive out there is when someone can't handle the pains of life and they're out there taking something from somebody, overstepping their boundaries on somebody because they have to get their needs met, then that actually can turn into criminal behavior where you're just taking because you have this need, because you can't take care of the need yourself, so that other person has something that you want. And it could be their chemistry, their biochemistry. It could be drugs. It could be, a material item that you think you must have. And so when we have always been there for our kids at every freaking moment of their life, especially emotionally and as a baby, now you see why these children sometimes, a lot of the times, now turn into predators because of how they were raised, when all their need, every single what they thought their needs. I mean, hey, you get fed, you get changed, you have shelter, you have clothes. Anything more than that, then yeah, can turn into someone who feels entitled that if they want something, they can just take it. And so then that's what creates the narcissist. That's what creates the borderline when people say no to you and you can't handle no. That's why we have issues with mommy's boys. And then their mommies always meet their needs. And so then they have their wife or their girlfriend and they just take, or they expect their wife and girlfriend to be the mommy and be all that. Yeah, you can see the outcome. And so crying it out, I've cried it out. Oh shit, let me tell you, when my dog passed away, I cried it out. I just let it go. I didn't try to stop it. But see, people naturally in this world, they naturally go to the medical holistic system, or they use somebody to stop their body's natural processes. Why do you say naturally? Because we've been trained. Okay? Anything that you do is natural because it's how you were conditioned to do it. So to say that this is natural versus that, I mean, everything is natural, just how, what's the reasoning behind the conditioning and what kind of outcome you want to have. Okay, so right now in our society, it is natural to go and stop a baby from crying. After they've been fed, after they've been changed, and there's nothing poking them and hurting them, and the baby is crying, they don't know what it is, they don't have a fever, but they're just crying, and they're like, oh God, I gotta go and stop the baby from crying. Then that baby then learns how to manipulate the parents at a very young age. All they gotta do is fucking cry. And you see it in kids out there that are spoiled. All they got to do is cry and throw a temper tantrum, and you see the parents like, oh, Johnny, Billy, Susie, here, let me give you a toy. Let me give you this. Let me give you that. And that's how we create spoiled children in our society, because the parents don't understand boundaries. They don't understand how to put limitations. They don't understand how to develop self-restraint in that child. And so these children become entitled. And they will do themselves in. They will be very excessive. And you saw it in the Murdoch case. Those kids had nobody put boundaries on them. They were given everything: drugs, alcohol, sex, girlfriends, material items, and they did not ever have to deal with consequences. And so then guess what happens? It takes a whole family being annihilated, when you think about it, for then people to realize, oh God, maybe the alcohol and all that privilege and entitlement actually was destructive to so many people, not only that family, but that whole community. Watch that Netflix series. You can see what entitlement does to people on that scale of a level when you have that much money, and even people who are, poor and impoverished and were given everything they could possibly want. You can also see on that level. And so that's why the Georgia Guidestones is existing, because we have to guide reproduction carefully. And then this whole thing of releasing the demons needs to be conditioned at a young age, or else it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks, and an old dog could be someone who is 10, 15 years old. Then you have like the English stiff upper lip, where they don't emote anything. They're stoic. So they don't release. They just hold everything inside, and then they explode or turn into serial killers. Okay, and so now it's time to release the demons. It's time to express, but do it in a safe way. And so now with this climate change, people are expressing. Some are obviously doing stupid shit, because I could hear the sirens, and you hear about police chases and people driving really fast and the police are chasing after them, or they're committing crimes, or they're committing homicides and crimes like that. So you're seeing that people's demons are being released, but people who had never been taught how to release their demons properly are doing it in destructive ways. And so that's why that's why we are in a virtual society. We have delivery services. Be very careful when you put yourself in the public square out there, because you don't know how people's demons are going to be released, and you can be caught in the crossfire. I mean, nowadays you got to be careful, because we have raised so many entitled people who are now just at their wits' end, and they are suffering, and they have to release. And sometimes the release process isn't peaceful, isn't relatively peaceful. It's actually quite violent. And so, there's a reason and a method behind the madness that's going on. And you got to see the bigger picture, not just the little small pictures that you see out there, but there's a bigger picture out there that most people are not aware of. And so when I talk about predatory and suffering behavior, I mean, what did I say here? I wrote a lot. But yeah, we have developed very caveman instinct type of response to suffering. And when we respond to suffering so much with all of our energy and all of our thoughts and prayers and fears and all of that, yeah, we turn into predators, because we're feeding off that energy, we're feeding off that suffering, and we are actually depleting that person when you think about it. That's why when you see thoughts and prayers, or someone say, oh, pray for me, or no, this person has a health issue, or this person, you see everybody converge, and that's like a vampire feeding frenzy. Okay, suffering attracts predators. Suffering attracts predatory behavior. How much suffering is just it's based upon how when you suffer a whole lot, you can live from that and then not have as much suffering. But when you're suffering a whole lot and then you die in the end, there are people who are going to take percentages of your life. They're going to feed off that, because when someone dies, right, and they have an estate, and then you see all the family members come around and start claiming their that's like the vultures. When someone is suffering, the vultures come out. That's a better way to explain it. Or when someone dies and they have a huge estate, the vultures come out. That's why families just go, that's why families have issues when there is an estate, because someone didn't actually say, okay, this person gets this, this, and this. They left it up to the government and for the family to go fight it out. And they do, and people, they don't get along afterwards. So the suffering brings out the vultures. And that's why the whole J world was so attractive to so many people, because so many people were suffering, they were releasing demons, and the vultures were coming out left and right. They were coming out of the woodwork. And so your foundation will determine if you can handle the suffering of your release process and the suffering of the vultures coming out trying to feed upon your energy. And you have to put roadblock after roadblock after roadblock if you need to release those demons, because sometimes you can't release those demons like silently and quietly. Sometimes it takes being public. Okay? Because what's in the dark eventually must come to light, and when it comes to light and people know about it, it not only frees you, but it also gives somebody else an opportunity to release their demons. But then also, not only does it free you, but then the vultures come out. And so not only do you have to survive your own release process, but then also the vultures that want to feed upon that situation. And so that's what people don't realize with the J world, is that when you do release the demons finally, like really release them, you also have to contend with the vultures out there. And so there is a two-part to the J world, releasing your own demons in so many different ways, to not only free yourself, but help free your children too, because they have to find a way to release. And sometimes they have to do it publicly, and there's certain things that may have happened to them that was kept under wraps, and somebody out there did something to them that need to be exposed. And so if they can release those demons without dying and being cannibalized from the vultures out there, that is an awesome way to be, and takes your power back. And so it is a process to do that, and not everybody survives that, okay? And some people won't even attempt it because they don't think they can survive not only the release process, but then the vultures out there, they can't wait to cannibalize them during that process, okay? So caveman instincts are attracted to the blood in the water, and you can trigger predatory behavior in people, and that's all the cancer, disease, chronic illness, the suffering, all the abuse stuff. I'll tell you, the vultures come out. They come out with the Paris Hilton stuff. Okay, they came out when I was going through my stuff, but I was able to handle the vultures that were trying to cannibalize me. Hold on, I gotta blow my nose. So people are like predators. They are attracted to suffering. When you stop suffering so much, you won't attract so many predatory people around you. Predators smell blood in the water, which is why people go into the law profession, because there's so much suffering out there. So much of it that you throw a rock and hit something and there might be a lawsuit somewhere that you can go and try to win and get a bunch of money, right? So, which is why lawyers are referred to as sharks, okay? They can smell blood from a mile away. They can smell suffering. Oh yeah, people can smell suffering even on Facebook. Oh, it's it's pretty unmistakable, the suffering that's out there. And so you can read that about ambulances are like meat wagons. And so that's why people rely on friends and family, because you're suffering so much, they're suffering, you're attracted to each other, and you're just helping each other go through your suffering and feeding on each other and cannibalizing each other, and you're both then, going down down over the cliff together. So it's an art to reveal your suffering without attracting predators who will want to feed on your blood, suck the life out of you. And so drama and trauma is suffering. It's like bleeding, okay? And so there is a way to reveal suffering where you're not cannibalized by the vultures that are feeding upon that energy. And some people use their suffering to help keep them alive until they pass away. So you see all the Me Too movements, right? You see that happen in the Jeffrey Epstein. They all came out and they're revealing their suffering. And they're like, oh yeah, we want justice. And they're thinking they're going to get, a certain amount of money from the Epstein estate. But some maybe got a little bit of money, but a lot of them were revealed their suffering and they have no return on that investment. Not only do the vultures come out there and be like, oh, you deserved it or something, but they gave everyone a show, but they really have nothing to show from that. They're not going to prolong their life. They're going to probably use their whole life to try to get justice and just utilize those resources until they pass away. And so their only claim to fame, so to speak, is the fact that they were a victim of Jeffrey Epstein, Maxine or Ghislaine Maxwell or R. Kelly. And so they might have got a little bit of fame from being a victim, but it hasn't really helped them. See, that's the thing. When you're looking for justice and you spend your life looking for justice because of somebody else, you'll end up being cannibalized by those who get titillated by all of the activity that was around you and all of your suffering. And so you have to realize that that's also what's out there. So be very careful how you reveal your suffering. You can reveal it in a way without titillating everybody. You can make inferences without titillating the world, but you're doing it because you're doing it for your own release process, but you're not trying to destroy somebody else. Okay? You're not trying to destroy or take someone else down in the process. What you're doing is you're doing your own release, and you're giving people an opportunity to say that you can survive the release without destroying yourself and without titillating somebody else who loves to hear that kind of stuff. Because I didn't watch the whole Paris Hilton thing. I heard Sloan kind of talk about it in a peripheral way, which I like listening to Sloan because he's really articulate, and he seems like he has a good head on his shoulders, and he also reveals a lot of stuff in Hollywood. But he talked about certain things that are like, okay, I get that, but I'm not going to go and get titillated by Paris Hilton's whole video. I think I listened to it, like maybe a little bit of it, and then I'm just like, okay, that's enough. I don't need to hear all the gritty details, but people who are so fascinated by the gritty details, they get off on it. When people ask me, well, what happened to you? A couple years ago, someone asked me that. I'm like, it's none of your business what happened with me. I mean, I went through some shit, but you don't need to know the gritty details. But they were getting off on it. They wanted to hear the suffering. And when someone asks you those kind of questions, what happened to you specifically? They're vultures. Vultures. It's none of their fucking business. Okay? If you want to reveal gritty details, you reveal it. But sometimes you don't need to. You just need to release those demons and say, okay, I've gotten past it, and then you move forward, and that's it. But you don't need to divulge them and then try to take somebody else down in the process. Okay? And so that's right now how suffering is being used, is that they're using it to take down somebody else and obviously line their own pockets, because everyone will buy something that is so titillating, like those type of experiences. It's like reading a porn novel, and those who are predators will get off on that. And my book doesn't go into any details. I make inferences, but I don't make any detail. I've come to terms with all that, and it's there for you to actually help yourself not take someone down or titillate a predator who wants to hear all those gross details. Okay? And so that's the difference. That's the thing about the J world, is you're not out there to destroy people. You're out there to help yourself and give people a chance to help themselves. Okay? And so there's a reason why I am on my own and I don't have anyone in the J world next to me, really, when you think about it. I've made my acknowledgments, and these people have learned their boundaries. They know their boundaries. People that I've acknowledged, they know they're awesome. That's why I acknowledge them. Okay, so, you know, there's a whole method behind my fucking madness. Believe me, and as soon as I learn it later what my method is, but I just didn't have the space to, well, I had the space, I just didn't have the words to explain it. Okay, so as soon as you hear or read someone say, pray for this person or that person because of a health issue, you see the vultures come out, the predators. They come out and they slurp on that information. And so I knew there was a scientific and allegorical reason why social media and why it was so necessary. We had to see how we behaved out there in the world. And I'll tell you, people are so comfortable in being a bully. People are so comfortable in being mean. People are so comfortable in just being, you know, so vulturish that they're being a savior. They think they're doing good. And so when you're on the outside looking in on how people behave on Facebook and what they're saying and what they're doing about somebody else or about, you know, whatever, now you see what kind of child rearing practices were going on in that household and how they're raising their children. And you can't tell them it's right or wrong, because remember, in their world they're right, so you can't try to convert them, but you can observe behaviors in people and realize there's a reason why the Georgia Guidestones exist. There's a reason why we're in climate change. There's a reason why we have authority out there, because they have people who are so comfortable in destroying somebody else, and they don't even blink twice. They cannot wait to destroy another person, place, or thing. They cannot wait to do it. And all in the name of God, all in the name of Savior, all in the name of Satan. I mean, I'll tell you, you give people a reason to do something, they'll do it and justify it. And if it's accepted, socially accepted, they'll just act out and they think it's perfectly fine. And you're like, dude, do you not have a moral compass on how you are responding or saying things about people or to people? No, because it's so socially acceptable. And that's great, because now we see what we have produced out there. And now we see why we're in this climate change, why we're in this depopulation agenda. And then you stay away from them. You don't interact with them because they will bleed on you. Okay? Because they're suffering too. All right. And so anyway, so yeah, I mean, I post about my pictures and all that. But yeah, about the raising the children. First, yes, Audrey, pray, yes. And so yeah, the whole thing with the raising the children, you know, I talk about the crying as far as the coughing, the sneezing, the blowing your nose, all that stuff. That then starts going into the medical side of it. And I'm not trying to go into the medical side of how you're supposed to react to, you know, a kid with mucus or a kid coughing. Like today I was coughing really hard this morning because I still had poop in my system. And then after I coughed, I'm like, oh, I probably still have poop in my system. So I went to the restroom and yep, sure enough, poop came out. And so for me, knowing, you know, the coughing and the sneezing, the blow my nose says that there's waste in my system that needs to be released. Now, obviously, when you're raising a kid, crying and looking up those different things about what is causing the crying, what you've already figured out, like you've already changed them, you fed them, and there's nothing poking them, then crying is a way to release their demons. And also crying is a way to probably even open up their arteries and capillaries, their own alimentary canal. Because when you stop someone from crying, you stop the energy from releasing, then you atrophy. You train that child to atrophy their body's release process. So it probably already happens way early that people have atrophied their body's release process because of the fact that we are so averse to crying after we figured out that they don't need food and all that stuff. Okay? Because I'll tell you, yeah, children inherit your demons. And when they inherit your demons, they have to release them. And so sometimes when you're crying, then also you're mucusing up and maybe you're pooping and diarrhea, and that's all a release process. And I went through crying and throwing shit, way early on in the J world. Because when I did the J juice and my husband triggered me because he is who he is back then, and we were still going through our own evolution. I cried and I threw a hanger at the wall and I was so frustrated, and it wasn't even just him. It was just there's so much stuff that needed to be released that was held at bay because of all the, the different ways that that we try to stop our pain from releasing. And so the whole J world is the release of the demons. It really is. But you can abuse that because you can also cure yourself. Because remember, salt and water, regardless if it's probiotic or something else, is a cure, and it can actually stop your body from releasing. That's why people were experiencing constipation after so much J juice that cured the poop in their system. And that's why I had to go and dig it out. Okay? So that's what taught me how to dig it out. So the fact that I was using so much J juice, it cured the poop in my system. I had to go dig it out. But even then, this environment with so much energy, remember, J juice is so much energy, it's ionic. When you're in a high climate change, your poop can also be constipated in your body. And then you'll still have to dig it out because of how much energy. I felt this last couple of days, the heartbeats, I could feel the energy, even a little bit of the heat. Okay, but I have an excellent release process. I have indicators that let me know, like coughing. Like last night, I was blowing my nose so much. I could actually feel at 3 o'clock in the morning, my nose fill up with mucus. And so I always have a napkin around or a washcloth to blow my nose, hard, blow my nose, blow my nose, blow my nose as hard as I can. And it also pushes the poop out. And so yeah, even in this environment, you can be constipated from the frequencies. Okay. And so I'll tell you, you know, when you allow your kid to cry it out, and then they also strengthens their release process, then you don't need to rely on someone else to do the Heimlich maneuver, to do CPR, or to do anything, to take a pill to develop hormones like taking insulin and all this other stuff. I mean, diabetics and heart attack patients and those with autoimmune disorders and cancers and diseases all have an atrophied immune system. And so they're always relying on somebody else to open and close their arteries and capillaries and blood vessels and hormones. And so, yeah, being that dependent on your friends and your family and the pills, the powder supplements, the detoxes and remedies and surgeries and the medical holistic system, when you're by yourself and you eat a piece of food and you don't have the strength to release it out of your throat because it gets caught in there, you'll die by yourself. That's why you must understand that releasing at a young age, even when you're a baby, if crying, could also help condition the rest of your body to release. But when you stop the crying in a baby, when it's not hungry, you know, all that stuff, when you stop the crying in the baby because it doesn't want to feel alone and it doesn't want to, and you don't want it to feel that, you don't want it to release. And see, that's the thing, you know, when a baby, like, then it goes into baby sickness. And so when a baby's sick, then people are like, oh, I got to go get antibiotics. I got to go get this. I mean, that's where it all starts. The medical system is where everything starts. And so there's ways, you know, when your baby's coughing, it's trying to release. When it's coughing, when you try to stop the cough, then now whatever was in the body is staying in the body. See, but that's, again, medical advice that I'm not trying to give, but I'm trying to tell you the ramifications when you stop the body's natural release process. You got to help the baby release. And you know, as they get older and they become more aware, you can tell them the importance of coughing and sneezing and blowing your nose and all of that. And when you're training up here how to do it, then you're also probably training down there when you're at a young age where you don't have to go and dig everything out. But even down the road when things get crazy, maybe they learn how to dig their own shit out. But that's something that, you know, each family's gonna have to figure out for themselves. But we have to figure out, everything starts from when you're a baby. And I'll tell you how hard it is to raise a kid in this society. It's easy to coddle a kid. It's easy to create another tool for the system. All you gotta do is just coddle them and give them whatever the fuck they want. And maybe, you know, they'll have a relatively okay life if there's enough money and they can be, you know, something good at this. But as soon as life gets hard, that's when the criminal behavior, predatory behavior and all that. And you know life is gonna change. You know shit's gonna get hard. You know everything. And so now it's like, do you really want to create another tool for the system to then be used and abused and all that? So it's raising a kid right now. Not for me. Even having a dog, not for me at this point, because right now it's just enough to keep myself and my husband going. You know, he has his own background that I'm going to help him through and figure out, help him out the door or help him build himself up. I'm going to help him no matter what. That's what my marriage is about. So taking care of anything else out there, no, not right now. Not right now. And even in the future, we're not going to be in a calm climate for a long ass time. Oh, we'll be in this climate change for some years. I would say at least 20, 30, 40 years. Okay? I would say the next 20, 30, 40 years, you will be in climate change. You will be constantly adjusting to the climate. And you'll be taking on so many fucking demons, and you'll be releasing them as well. And you'll be constantly eating and releasing and feeling the heat and maybe having to sleep and figure out how to fit in making money, when to do that, fitting in your innovation. I mean, and you will want to have as much room to do that without having to take care of somebody else. Okay, whether it's a family or a friend or a child or this. Those who have children, you have 18 years to figure it out to try to simultaneously do that. When after 18, you'll be up to you to figure out if you want to coddle them for the rest of their fucking life or you want to let them spread their own wings and figure it out. But at least those who have kids, you have 18 years to figure out how to do everything simultaneously. And you can still work. I mean, come on, you can do it. It's just you have to learn how to balance out your life. Okay, and you'll be a great representation for your kids when they finally get faced with how they have to deal with stuff. So, anyways, I mean, I'm not reading all of this there, but I wanted to show you that I did my own purging process yesterday of releasing the demons. And, that bin, that box of stuff, there were so many photographs that of ex-boyfriends and whatever, that I'm like, Jesus, why do I, but I had them because it was just memories. But now they are in the garbage. And so I kept maybe the 50 photos that I thought were important. There's probably, you see in my other Facebook, my original Facebook, with photos from the last, 10, 15 years. Okay. But the photos I posted yesterday was from the last 30 years. And so you can see just all the groups I circulated in, the type of people I hung out with. A lot of them were older people. You saw in one of them when I was like in my 20s, I was hanging out with 30-year-olds. I was hanging out with people from foreign countries. I was hanging out with military types, people from foreign countries, because I was roommating with the girl in the military. I was in like services, and she was like in the maintenance squadron over there at Moffett. And she lived with people from Diablo Valley College, and they were on student visas. So they're from Germany and from other countries like Lebanon. And so I was exposed to some very diverse cultures and older people, and that's who brought me then into the landmark education and all of that. And so I was always hanging out with older people, just taking their knowledge, and then also hanging out with people who were smarter than me. Older and smarter than me, had like advanced degrees in specific things like biotech or biomolecular biology, and hanging out with just all different types, and they were always smarter than me because I was just so thirsty for knowledge, thirsty to be mature, thirsty to get to the next level, because the traditional way wasn't going to work. It wasn't going to. So I had to get life experience, and also put myself in different circles and ponds. So that's how you can get life experience: is you put yourself in different cultures. You put and you don't become so homogenized. That's the ultimate recipe for death: is the homogenization. That's why social media it was like a coming out process, and they had to put in community standards, because when people see another lifestyle, another belief system, they get stupid if they are intolerant, as you see it in the whole J world. You saw how intolerant people are to even my information, so you can imagine when you have all the cultures out there that used to be, under the radar, because you only hear about them through newspapers and articles and maybe National Geographic. But now you're seeing people's lifestyles and belief system in your face. And you see the intolerance out there. You see people going like, oh my God, this is going on, that's going on. They're going to marry animals now over there in Denmark. They're going to marry this. This person used to be a dude or used to be a girl, and now they're a guy. I mean, okay, who cares? If they're going to allow something like bestiality, which I don't agree with, but it doesn't matter what I agree with. If they're going to allow it over there, like in that commune, that culture, okay, it's not for me to decide. If they're allowed it over there, then those who have those proclivities, right, are going to have to move over there and practice their lifestyle belief system. And I have no room to say anything because it's legal over there. And they will have their own laws and their own things to figure out over there. But I'm not going to do that over here, no. But if it's okay over there, let them do their thing. That's the thing. It's not for me to say. I don't have to agree with everything and still allow them to live their life. No one should be condemning anyone to death because you don't agree with their lifestyle and belief system. You have to make sure they're not victimizing someone or something. And that's something for them to figure out what victimization is and what it means and how it manifests. And so that's what right now we're facing the diversity of our population. So you have a chance to figure out how to get your own demons in check and release them and develop your own lifestyle. But there's me others that are going to have many demons and they're still abiding by the laws of their society. And just because the laws in your world and your moral compass is different than theirs doesn't mean that they're wrong, bad, or whatever. It just means that if you don't agree with it, block it, delete it, don't even acknowledge it, let them live their life. And let the law decide what is right and wrong over there. Okay? Take care of your own backyard first. That's what it comes down to. Take care of your own backyard first. You can't save or demonize somebody else. The law is the determining factor. The government and the law is the determining factor. And so that way, then you have a choice out there. And that's what we're giving people is choices. Okay? And then we are discussing what is morally right and what is morally wrong, what is morally ethical, what is not, and all that. And that's all just up for conversation. So anyways, but yeah, so the justification of the whole J world about the release process really should start as a baby. And we're just laying out the groundwork. This is so new. But you see the outcome. You see the outcome when people are coddled and when they stop their body from releasing and it builds up and it becomes explosive, or people become entitled because they're so used to having somebody give in to their wants and their needs. And what they think they need is really a want. What they think they want is what they need. And it becomes blurred. And people don't know what they want or what they need because they think everything that they want is what they need. And then that's how you get criminal behavior. Okay? So restraint should not be with food. Restraint really should be with the pleasures in life, with the drugs, the alcohol, all the the things that stop the body from releasing. That's what we should be restraining on people is on some level is teaching restraint on stopping the body from release. So if you were feeling bad and then you turn to cannabis, can you restrain yourself and not smoke the cannabis because you're feeling bad? That's what we should teach as far as restraint. Not because you see that piece of cake that you should restrain yourself from eating that piece of cake. That's the depopulation starvation agenda, which you see that's part of some of the spiritual religions out there. But when you're feeling bad and you want to turn to something to stop you from feeling bad, can you restrain yourself and just face the fucking pain? Face the demons, release. We'll see. All right, bye.